All right, hello and welcome to our first of many lectures for this Econ 375 on-demand online class. Woo! Get this lecture series going. Of course, I'm your instructor, Kevin Owens. I'm joined today by my son. He's going to be tagging along today. So there you go. Let's get into it. Today, we're starting with our introduction to the basic ideas of ethics. And of course, this is the book that we are working out of, Doing Ethics by Lewis Vaughn. So again, we're introducing the basics of ethics and moral reasoning today. What is ethics? Well, ethics is the study of morality. It is a formal philosophical study of morality. Goes back a very long time. The earliest formal philosophers who studied ethics, people like Aristotle, Plato, even before them, thousands of years ago. Amazing stuff. Adam Smith, the father of modern economics, he was also an ethicist. He studied ethics, didn't he? Yes, he did. He did. So what is morality? We said ethics is the philosophical study of morality. Morality is right and wrong. It is our belief and our questions about the rightness and wrongness of actions, of people, of values. This is what morality is all about. So this book titled Doing Ethics, what does it mean to do ethics? Well, we're going to ask, are actions right or wrong? Are people good or evil? We're going to be able to question the foundation. What is the basis of our moral decision making? What happens if we don't do ethics? Well, if we don't do ethics, we run the risk of losing freedom. Well, lots of different civilizations over time have asked this question. They've been put in a position where they had to vote or had to choose their leadership in some way, and sometimes from ancient Rome to modern day, perhaps Venezuela, to the Third Reich. Oh my goodness. Sometimes you vote in somebody that is going to have deleterious effects on your country because you weren't really questioning the goodness of their behavior, or maybe you didn't ask the right questions, you didn't consider the right things, perhaps. In our modern American context, loss of freedom. As John Adams said, the Constitution of the United States is meant for a moral and religious people. It is wholly unfit for any other. We are given a great deal of liberty in this country, from our ability to speak freely, free rights of journalism and the press, rights of free religion, and goodness, Second Amendment rights to firearms. These aren't the kind of freedoms that you can loosely give to immoral people who will do evil things. So if you want to hold on to that freedom, you're going to have to do ethics. You're going to have to make moral decisions. If you don't think about the moral implications of your actions, you might get some stuff wrong. You might do some wrong things. Perhaps even scarier, you might not be able to explain your actions to the people around you or to yourself. Oh my goodness, you got to be able to justify what you did, why you did it, explain why what you did was right or perhaps wrong. Oh goodness. What are the different divisions of ethics? Well, we've got a few different branches of ethics we'll talk about. If we try to just tell ethical actions as they are, tell about morality as it is, we're engaging in descriptive ethics. Almost like a kind of social science approach, just laying out the way that people actually behave. That is descriptive ethics. And philosophers distinguish between a few different divisions of ethics. To clarify, normative ethics studies the rules, the principles of different civilizations and the different cultures. We might try to ask, what are the moral rules that a different culture has? Why do they have those rules? And are those rules sound justified and good? What sorts of questions might this field deal with? Well, is the greatest goal to pursue in life happiness? Is the right thing the thing that does the best things, or do motivations matter? These are the kind of big normative questions we might ask. Meta-ethics is kind of a little heady, a little theoretical, perhaps. Meta-ethics asks questions about the fundamental logic of moral beliefs. So we're trying to get underneath our norms and question the assumptions that undergird them. So, is it possible to have objective moral truth? What does that mean? What does it mean for something to be right or wrong? Trying to really understand what we're saying when we say these words. Lastly, applied ethics, perhaps the most important to this class. This is where we take our norms and our judgments and our information about what is right and wrong, and we apply it to real-world questions. So what sorts of questions? Well, is it right to lie? If you're a journalist trying to forward your opinion, well, you really believe that if you lie about this thing, that the world will be better. Does that make it so? Well, maybe you think, a little consequentialist, you think, well, the consequences of the lie are good, therefore it's good. But then again, maybe the thing that you're doing has to be good, not just the consequences. These are sorts of big questions applied ethics will deal with. Is it right to eat animal flesh? Is that morally permissible? Certainly many people have decided that is not a morally permissible action and we shouldn't engage in it. I don't know. Big questions. Applied ethics. There are a few different kinds of value. Moral value and non-moral value first. So if I say something is good, what am I saying? Well, if I say that cheeseburger was good, I'm not really commenting on the moral quality of the cheeseburger. I'm commenting on something else. I'm saying that it is good in a non-moral sense. I have the example up here. Take Care was a good album. Of course, Take Care, this album by Drake, right? Yeah, it's an old one. It's from, I don't know, almost a decade ago now, but it was a good album back in the day. You know, my opinion on Drake, nothing was the same after nothing was the same. That's my humble opinion about Drake and his music. But obviously when we say that's a good album, we're not commenting on what the moral implications of it are. We could say saving that puppy was a good thing to do. Well, that's different. We're saying that's good as in that's a righteous, that's a good act, a morally correct act to pursue. There's also values that are extrinsic and values that are intrinsic. Extrinsic value is value that you get as a means to something else. When I buy gas, I don't buy it because I just love it. I love gas. I fill up that red container. I love the smell and perhaps the taste. No, that's not why you buy gas. Gas doesn't have intrinsic value. It has value because you can use it to do things, to drive your car, to mow the lawn. The use of the thing, the means, it is valuable as a means to something else. This is different than intrinsic value. You say that a painting is beautiful, therefore it has value. You say that a person, because of the innate value of their human life, that they have value. These are very different things than value as a means to some other end. We got some big ideas we might apply. Some fundamental ideas about ethics. First, the preeminence of reason. We have to put reasoning over feelings as we question these big ethical issues. It's not enough just to feel that you did the right thing. You have to be able to explain your actions. We have to take a universal perspective. We have to reach outside ourselves and take an unbiased approach. If it's right when one person does it, it's right when another person does it. We have to be impartial. We can't say that this person's life is more valuable than this other person's. We can't say that feeding this person is better than feeding that person. The welfare and interests of all individuals should be given the same weight. And finally, moral norms should be dominant over non-moral norms. Okay, so moral norms are rules about what's right and wrong. Non-moral norms, things like what's socially acceptable or what is legal. There is a long culture, a long history in this country of rejecting non-moral norms or laws in favor of moral norms. What am I talking about? You go back to civil disobedience by Thoreau. He's jailed because he refuses to pay a poll tax that supports a war, the Mexican-American War, that he felt was immoral. And he writes Civil Disobedience, explaining his justification. He did the right thing, not the legal thing, at least in his view, perhaps in yours as well. Very similar story, Martin Luther King Jr. In his letter from a Birmingham jail, he says a very, very similar tale. I'm doing what's right, even if it's not what's legal. And both men willing to suffer the consequences of those actions. When moral norms and non-moral norms conflict, the moral ones ought to win out. Some of you might be thinking, well, I have a religion. I have a school of thought. I have teachings. Therefore, I don't need to do ethics. I've already been told what the right thing to do is. I don't need further justification. This idea is called divine command theory. The right action is that which God dictates with no further explanation needed. But it might be a little more complicated than that. Because what if you disagree with someone else of your same religion or of a different religion? Or what if you disagree with your religious leader? You come to this, you read the same text, you come to different conclusions. This is you can see it gets very complicated. Indeed, most of our moral philosophers throughout history, most of our ethicists were religious. You can think of St. Thomas Aquinas and a host of different thinkers from Judaism, Islam, Christianity. Many of these different ethicists and moral philosophers still used reasoning to apply to these big ethical questions because religion alone couldn't explain the answer. Again, this idea of divine command theory is the idea that what is right is that which is commanded by God with no further explanation needed. This might leave us a little bit short. There's good reasons to agree with that, and I'm not here to say that it's wholly wrong that the right thing is what God says, but let's dive a little deeper into this question. The Euthyphro dilemma, which comes to us from a Platonic dialogue, it goes something like this. If the right thing is the thing that God says with no further justification, then one of two things must be true. Either God told us that this was the right thing because it was the right thing. If that's the case, then we're just adding this extra step. We could have just figured out what the right thing was, and we didn't need God to tell us, per se. On the other side, if the morally correct thing is simply whatever God tells us, then if God tells us to do something that we would perhaps perceive as morally wrong, well, then we're engaging in something that's wrong, but since God said it was right, then it is morally right. Either the action is right independent of God, or whatever God says is right. Either one of these ends of this dilemma are going to be a little tricky. They might present more questions. So again, not to dispute divine command theory, but perhaps to put a question to it. Maybe we still need ethics. We still need moral reasoning to really get to the heart of these big questions. And that's what we're going to try and do as we move forward. All right.